Imagine observing Earth from a spaceship window during a flight in space. Not long ago, only a handful of highly trained astronauts could do this. But things have changed in an amazing way. Back in 2001, a businessman named Dennis Tito changed everything when he paid $20 million to become the first space tourist visiting the International Space Station. That single trip started something big, a whole new way of thinking about space travel. And now, big companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic are working hard to make space trips possible for more people. According to recent studies, this industry could be worth $8.67 billion by 2030. That's huge. Let's dive into this incredible story of how ordinary people are starting to travel to space. Space tourism. Let's go back to the beginning. In the 1980s, NASA thought about sending regular people to space on their space shuttle. Sadly, when the Challenger spaceship accident happened in 1986, they had to stop these plans. For a long time after that, space remained a place only for trained astronauts and scientists. But everything changed in 2001. That's when Dennis Tito, an American businessman, paid $20 million to fly on a Russian spaceship called Soyuz. He spent 8 whole days in space, living on the International Space Station. This was huge news. It showed that if you had enough money, you could actually go to space. After Tito, other wealthy people followed. Each one paid millions of dollars for their own space adventure, and the real game changer came when private companies started getting involved in space travel. Unlike government space agencies that focused on science and exploration, these companies had a different goal. They wanted to make space travel a business. They started thinking about ways to make space trips cheaper and more regular, kind of like airplane flights. One of the biggest breakthroughs was when companies figured out how to reuse rockets. Before this, every rocket could only be used once. Imagine throwing away an airplane after just one flight. That made space travel super expensive. But then SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, did something amazing. They created rockets that could land back on Earth and be used again and again. Some of their rockets, like the Falcon 9, can now be used more than 10 times. This made space launches much cheaper, bringing down costs from hundreds of millions to just a few $1,000,000 per launch. The big players. 3 main companies are leading the charge in space tourism, and each one is doing it differently. Let's look at what makes each one special. First, there's SpaceX, started by Elon Musk in 2002. They're famous for their Falcon 9 rocket, which can be reused multiple times, and while they mostly launch satellites and send NASA astronauts to the International Space Station, they have big plans for tourism. Their spacecraft, called Crew Dragon, has already carried astronauts safely to space. But that's not all. They're building an even bigger spacecraft called Starship that could carry up to 100 people at once. Imagine that. A space bus that could take 100 tourists to space together. Then there is Blue Origin, run by Amazon's founder Jeff Bezos. They built a rocket called New Shepard specifically for tourist trips. These aren't long trips, they last about 11 minutes total, but in those 11 minutes, passengers go right to the edge of space, which is about 62 miles up, that is like 100 kilometers. They feel zero gravity for about 3 to 4 minutes and see Earth's curve against the blackness of space. And the best part? The whole vehicle is designed to be super safe with multiple backup systems. Virgin Galactic, created by Richard Branson, does things a bit differently. Instead of launching a rocket straight up from the ground, they first fly a special airplane high into the sky, carrying a spaceplane. When they're high enough, the spaceplane detaches and fires its own rockets to reach space. Their flights also last a few hours total, with about 5 to 6 minutes of weightlessness. They've designed their cabin with lots of windows so passengers can get amazing views of Earth. These companies charge different prices too. A seat in Virgin Galactic costs about $450,000, while Blue Origin hasn't publicly announced their prices, but they're believed to be similar. SpaceX's orbital trips are much more expensive, costing tens of millions of dollars, but they last much longer and go much further into space. A space tourist experience. Let's talk about what space tourists actually experience. It's pretty different depending on whether you choose a quick up and down trip called suborbital or a longer orbital flight. For suborbital trips with Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic, here's what happens. First, you spend 2 to 3 days training. You'll learn safety procedures, practice moving in zero gravity, and get used to your spacesuit. On launch day, you climb aboard either a rocket, Blue Origin, or a spaceplane, Virgin Galactic. The actual flight is quick but intense. During launch, you feel strong forces pushing you back in your seat that is about 3 times the force of gravity. Then suddenly, everything goes quiet and you feel weightless. You can unbuckle your seatbelt and float around the cabin. Through large windows, you see Earth's curve and the black sky of space. Many passengers say this view changes their life forever. After 3 to 6 minutes of floating, it's time to come back down. The whole flight lasts about 11 to 15 minutes from launch to landing. Orbital flights are much more involved. Currently, these are mainly offered through SpaceX. Though they've only done a few so far, you spend several weeks training, learning everything from emergency procedures to basic spacecraft operations. The flight itself lasts several days, and you orbit Earth every 90 minutes, meaning you see 16 sunrises and sunsets every day. You have time to do science experiments, take photos, and really get used to floating in space. The big challenges. While space tourism is incredibly exciting, it faces some big hurdles. The biggest one is cost. Even though prices have come down from the $20 million Dennis Tito paid in 2001, it's still super expensive. A suborbital trip costs around $450,000, while orbital trips still cost many millions. According to market research, only about 1% of people earning over $1 million per year would be willing to spend $500,000 on a space trip. Safety is another huge concern. Space is dangerous. There's no way around it. The rockets used for launches contain thousands of gallons of explosive fuel. In space, there is harmful radiation, extreme temperatures, and the risk of hitting space debris. Companies spend billions making their vehicles as safe as possible. For example, Blue Origin's new Shepard is an escape system that can quickly separate the passenger capsule from the rocket if something goes wrong. Environmental concerns are also growing. Each rocket launch releases a lot of emissions into the atmosphere, and a single space tourism flight can produce up to 100 times more carbon dioxide per passenger than a long-haul flight. Companies are working on cleaner rocket fuels and more efficient engines. But this remains a big challenge. But despite these challenges, the future looks incredibly exciting. According to industry reports, the space tourism market is expected to grow from about $598 million in 2021 to $8.67 billion by 2030. That's growth of 37.1% each year, and companies are already planning amazing new projects. Orbital Assembly Corporation wants to build a space hotel called Voyager Station that could open as soon as 2027. It would spin to create artificial gravity and have rooms for 400 people. Japanese company Space One hopes to build a space viewing lift, basically a high-altitude balloon that would take tourists to the edge of space. SpaceX has even bigger plans. They want to use their Starship to send tourists around the moon. The first such trip, called Dear Moon, is planned to carry 8 artists on a 6-day journey around the moon, and they're also working on plans for trips to Mars. Though these are still many years away. Looking to the future, the impact of space tourism could be huge. By 2030, the industry might create over 400,000 new jobs worldwide, and these won't just be jobs for rocket scientists. We'll need everything from space hotel managers to zero-gravity tour guides. The technology developed for space tourism is already helping in other areas. Things like new materials for spacecraft are being used in everyday products. Medical devices created to monitor space tourists are helping patients on Earth, and even the way we grow food might change as companies figure out how to grow fresh vegetables in space. But perhaps the biggest impact will be on how we see our planet. Astronauts often talk about something called the overview effect, the powerful feeling of seeing Earth as a small, fragile ball in space. Of the roughly 600 people who have been to space, almost all say this view changed their life forever. As more people experience this through space tourism, it could change how we think about taking care of our planet. We're standing at the beginning of something amazing. Space tourism isn't just about rich people taking expensive trips, it's about opening up space to everyone, bit by bit. Yes, it is expensive now, but so were the first airplane tickets. In 1914, a flight across the US cost $5,000, and that's about $140,000 in today's money. And now, millions of people fly every day. Space tourism could follow the same path. As technology improves and costs come down, more people will have the chance to see our planet from above. This could change not just how we travel, but how we think about ourselves and our place in the universe. The numbers tell us this industry is growing fast, from $598 million to $8.67 billion in just a few years, and behind these numbers are real people working to make space accessible to everyone. Whether it's engineers designing safer rockets, scientists figuring out how to grow food in space, or entrepreneurs planning space hotels, thousands of people are working to make space tourism a reality. Remember, every big change in history started with small steps. The Wright brothers' first flight lasted just 12 seconds, and today's space tourism flights might seem brief and expensive, but they're laying the groundwork for something much bigger. In the coming decades, we might see regular flights to space hotels, tourist trips around the moon, and maybe even vacations on Mars. Space tourism isn't just about adventure, it's about expanding what's possible for humanity. As more people look back at Earth from space, they'll bring home not just memories, but a new understanding of our world and our place in it. The journey to make space accessible to everyone has just begun, and the best part is, we are all invited to be part of it. And that's all for today. If you want to stay updated on more fascinating space developments, hit that subscribe button and we'll explore the cosmos together. See you in the next video.